In this video, we're going to identify an unknown using the mass percent. There are three possible compounds that this unknown could be. It could be N2O4, it could be SO2, and it could be CO2. What we know is that a 23-gram sample was found to contain 11.5 grams of oxygen. That's all we know. We're going to use that to determine which of these three compounds this sample was. Well, how do we do that? I have 11.5 grams of oxygen out of 23 grams of sample. So I can find the percent by mass of oxygen. It's going to be the mass of oxygen, 11.5 grams of oxygen, over the total, 23 grams total. And if you want, times 100%. Or you can leave it in decimal form, however works for you. 11.5 divided by 23. This is 50% by mass oxygen. On its own, that doesn't tell us much, but I have these formula. We can use those to find the percentages of each element. So for each of these, I need to figure out what percent by mass oxygen is in that formula. Let's start with N2O4. Well, 2 nitrogens, 4 oxygens. So 2 times 14.01 plus 4 times 16. That's going to give us a total mass of 92.02 grams per mole. And then we can use this to solve what the percentage would be. So what would the percent oxygen be in this? It would be 4 times 16, so 64 grams of oxygen out of the 92.02 grams in a mole of it. So if I'd had 1 mole of N2O4, I'd have 4 moles of oxygen. So 4 times 16 for 64. And the total would be 92. Well, 64 divided by 92 comes out at 0.695. So this is about 69.6% oxygen. Well, that's not 50%. So probably not N2O4. I'll jump over to my next one. Look at SO2. I've got 1 times sulfur, which is 32.06, and I've got 2 times oxygen, which is 16.00 each. This comes out 64.06 total. If I had a mole of this, I would have 64 grams of sample. Well, if I had a mole of it, I'd have 2 moles of oxygen, and 2 moles of oxygen is 16 plus 16, so 32 grams of oxygen out of every 64.06 grams total. Times 100% if you want the percentage. 32 divided by 64. Sure enough, that comes out at 50%. Sulfur is just about twice the weight of an oxygen atom. So 1 sulfur and 2 oxygens, it's about 50-50. That's pretty likely that it's probably SO2, but let's check the last one to see if maybe there's 2 that have that value. Pretty quick, we can see it probably won't be. Again, I have 2 oxygens and then 1 of the other atom, but the atom's carbon, which is much lighter than sulfur. But just to check, 1 times 12.01 for the carbon, plus 2 times 16.00 for the oxygen, 44.01 grams for a mole of carbon dioxide. Well, 1 mole of carbon dioxide, I'll have 2 moles of oxygen, so 2 times 16, again, I'll have 32 grams of oxygen out of that 44.01 grams total. 32 divided by 44 is going to be 72.7%. Of our possibilities, SO2 is spot on. So most likely, presuming it is indeed one of these 3 unknowns, it is sulfur dioxide. And that's a pretty good match, though you can get other things that are 50% oxygen by mass. Most likely you'd be able to experiment and see what the other element is and have a fairly good idea what likely unknowns you would have. So of these 3, the SO2 fits our data.